So even though I'm just starting my PhD here at Cambridge, it's sort of a continuation of a project that I started at the University of Montreal as a master's student in anthropology. So my research explores the ethics of the interreligious encounter and specifically the activities of an evangelical church in Nashville, Tennessee. And the leadership of this church has recently begun encouraging members of the congregation to rethink their approach to traditional evangelism and participate in informal dialogue and relationship building, friendship building with Muslim residents of the city. And so they're doing this against the backdrop of what is unfortunately widespread xenophobia and Islamophobia that has come to characterize in many ways the sort of typical evangelical response to rising diversity in many parts of the United States. So why Nashville? So the city is located in the southeastern region of the United States, known as the Bible Belt, where evangelicalism is predominant in the socio-religious landscape. And so in addition to being known as Music City, USA, or the cradle of the country music industry, Nashville is also widely known as the buckle of the Bible Belt. But the city has more cultural and religious diversity than other cities and towns in the region, and part of this is from a long history of refugee resettlement. And then also in the past 15 to 20 years, there's been a significant increase in immigration from all parts of the world, but particularly from Muslim majority countries. And so consequently, questions about rising diversity and interreligious relations, and particularly the growing Muslim population, feature prominently in public discourse and debate. And so while research on what is the overwhelmingly negative response to religious diversity in Tennessee is certainly an important subject for research, my project kind of looks into the more perhaps unexpected participation of evangelicals in the creation of discourses on religious pluralism and their efforts to, quote, be good neighbors in the new Nashville, which is something that I would hear a lot when I was there. And so one of the main social contexts for this is grassroots engagement in interreligious dialogue between ordinary citizens, and so not necessarily theologians or experts. So sort of theoretical context-wise, I'm interested in approaching this subject from the perspective of the anthropology of ethics and values, which studies, sort of very broadly speaking, the ways in which people conceive of and live out the various aspects of social and moral life that are most meaningful to them. And so more specifically, this project explores value conflict and moral ambivalence among, or that arise from evangelical engagement in pluralistic contexts. So as an anthropologist, among the most fruitful places to look in an empirical investigation of social change and value relations are the realms of social life where people seem to sort of be experiencing a shuffling or unsettling of value hierarchies that are normally unchallenged in certain ways. And so I think that for evangelicals in Nashville, at least some of them, this intercultural or interreligious, dialogue context is one of those realms. And so during my master's research, I observed that the members of this particular church are developing a different approach to relational ethics, namely one in which the pursuit of conversion is not communicated as the primary interest or telos of the engagement with the other. And so in doing this, they're challenging in many ways the conservative evangelical norms regarding the relationship between evangelism and hospitality. So while they remain committed to their faith position, they've become highly critical of proselytizing. There's a distinction that people make between proselytizing and evangelism, for example. And so instead they speak of pursuing authentic relationships with religious others. And in the things that I was hearing from people when I was there and in interviews and observations, this authenticity involves foregrounding the recognition of religious diversity and emphasizing an ethics of interpersonal mutuality. So I will mention, I'm not going to go too deep into the sort of theoretical things now, but I will mention that this authenticity and concern for recognition is not just a phenomenon among evangelicals. It also resonates with broader social trends in contemporary religiosity in the West that have been observed by a number of philosophers, social scientists, and also some theologians. So it's in this context that I ask, among other questions, how the members of this church conceive of their role as Christians in an increasingly pluralistic society, and how they navigate the moral ambivalences of their simultaneous commitment to evangelism and to the recognition of religious diversity. And so before I finish, I just wanted to end with a few sort of in the words of the people that I was speaking with. So a few quotes that I had pulled from my interviews that I did for my master's work. So, for example, Callie, a member of Ravenhill Church of Christ, which is the church that I was studying and continue to study, said, "I didn't go to the interfaith dinner that night thinking I'm going to make friends with a Muslim and then convert them. I don't think that's a good strategy if you're trying to do that. I don't think it's a way to form genuine relationships with people. But it does sometimes make me feel like a bad Christian to say I'm not interested in converting them." And then Jefferson, another member of the church, said, "Muslims need to feel that they're welcome here, that this is their home. Now, this may be counter to what my faith tradition says, but I don't think that our biggest need right now is for us to evangelize. That might be hypocritical, it might be wrong." And finally, Rebecca said, "Everything that I read in the Bible I believe to be truth. So part of that truth is that you have to be a follower of Jesus. You have to be a Christian. But I'm really torn on that because I appreciate other views on God. There are so many religions, and so even for me, in talking to my Muslim friends, for example, am I trying to convert them? No. Should I be? I don't know." And so I think that these statements sort of speak to the kind of ambivalence that I was talking about, that some people encounter when they engage in this sort of informal interreligious dialogue. And so I'll end it on that, I guess.